She had every reason to hate him. What he did ruined everything. Her reputation, her friendships, her future, and everyone expected her to make him pay. But she didn't. She chose something the world rarely teaches: forgiveness. And what happened next, no one saw coming. There was a young woman named Lena. She wasn't loud, didn't need to be. She didn't wear the brightest colors, didn't compete for attention in class. She never spoke just to be heard. She spoke when it mattered. In a world full of noise, Lena was the pause, the kind that made people listen differently when she finally did speak. At Jefferson High, she wasn't the prom queen. She wasn't the one with thousands of followers or the loudest laugh in the lunchroom. But if you asked anyone, who makes this place feel safe? Who's the person you trust with your worst secret? They'd say her name without hesitation. Lena. She was the glue, the kind of person who always had tissues in her bag, because someone was bound to cry during finals week. The kind who brought extra snacks, not because she was hungry, but because she knew James forgot his lunch again. She was the girl who noticed when your smile seemed off, the one who reminded teachers about someone else's birthday, even when she knew hers would probably be forgotten. She didn't care for credit. When group projects fell apart, she pieced them back together. When people drifted apart, she pulled them in. And when no one was looking, she kept showing up anyway. Lena didn't just do well in school. She belonged to it. Senior year, her name was on every wall without needing to be painted there. Student council president, debate team captain, first chair violin, peer tutor, honor roll, college bound. She was the kind of student teachers trusted to unlock the classroom door in the morning. The one who cleaned up after pep rallies when everyone else had already left. The one who handed in essays not just early but beautiful. Lena didn't do things halfway. Not with school. Not with people. Not with anything. She had a plan. A full ride to her dream school. A major in psychology. A future built on helping people the way she always had. With empathy, precision, and a belief in second chances. The recommendation letters came easily. So did the awards. But what never came easily to Lena was pride. She didn't broadcast her wins. She was the type to smile gently, say thank you and move on, already thinking of how to lift someone else up. The teachers admired her. The staff adored her. The students trusted her. She didn't stand at the top of the school in arrogance. She stood at the center of it, quietly holding it all together. But the thing about being kind, about giving your trust freely and assuming the best in people, is that it makes you vulnerable. Not weak, not naive, but open. And sometimes all it takes to undo everything you've built is one person who decides to take advantage of that openness. His name was Mason. They weren't close. Not really. He was in her physics class. Tall, athletic, smart when he tried, but mostly he coasted on charm. He wasn't cruel. Not directly. He smiled often, made teachers laugh, made excuses sound like apologies. One Thursday afternoon, he approached her after class, said his laptop crashed, said he had a college portfolio due and no one else to help, said he heard she was good with essays. Lena hesitated. She already had 2 papers of her own due, a fundraiser to organize, and tutoring sessions scheduled that weekend. But Mason's voice didn't sound manipulative. It sounded desperate, and that was all it took. She stayed up late editing his writing, let him borrow her laptop to finalize it, even gave him a copy of her old annotated notes. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't expect praise. She was just helping the way she always had. Then Monday morning came. She walked into school and felt it instantly. The stillness, the shift. Whispers seemed to follow her. Eyes lingered a little longer. Teachers didn't smile as wide. When she reached her locker, she saw it. On the main bulletin board outside the front office. A sheet of paper. Bold black letters across the top. Academic honesty violation, Lena Ortiz. She froze. The world slowed. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She thought it was a mistake. A prank. Some mix-up with another student. But as she stepped into class, the weight became undeniable. Teachers barely made eye contact. Classmates stayed quiet when she walked past. Friends didn't know what to say, so most said nothing at all. And Mason? He acted like nothing happened. Smiling, laughing with friends, sliding into class with earbuds in. When she tried to confront him, he shrugged, said he didn't know what she was talking about, said she must have taken his work by accident, said she hacked his files. Lena tried to explain. She had timelines, email trails, screenshots, but the administration was already looking for a scapegoat. And she, the high achiever, the quiet one, the too perfect student, became the easiest one to fall. They suspended her for 2 weeks, revoked her scholarship recommendation, filed it in her record with a warning. One more strike, and you're done. That's when the real silence began. Not just in the hallways, but inside her. The part of her that used to light up at school, dimmed. The part that trusted people to be good, cracked. And for the first time in her life, Lena didn't feel kind. She felt something else, something darker. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't confusion. It was hatred, shaking, bone-deep, gut-twisting hatred. Not just at what Mason had done, but at how easily everyone had let it happen. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, her phone buzzed with a new email notification. Subject line, "I'm sorry." The sender, Mason's younger sister. Just 2 lines. "I'm sorry for what my brother did. I found your notes in his drawer." Lena stared at the screen, and what came next wasn't what anyone expected. Her phone buzzed. Subject line, "I'm sorry." It was from an email she didn't recognize. A student account. The last name, familiar. She tapped. 2 sentences. "I'm sorry for what my brother did. I found your notes in his drawer." No signature, no explanation. But Lena didn't need one. She stared at the screen in silence. And for the first time in weeks, her hands didn't shake with rage. They trembled with something else. Validation. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't wrong. Mason had lied. He did steal her work. And someone finally confirmed it. It should have been a moment of triumph. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. She sat on the edge of her bed and whispered into the quiet room. Why would someone do that? The question wasn't meant for anyone to answer. She wasn't asking for closure. She was asking because she couldn't understand. How could someone look you in the eye, ask for help, accept your kindness, and then weaponize it? How could a person throw away their character just to protect their ego? She opened a new document, not for school, not for the principal, not for the scholarship board, for him, for the one person she hadn't spoken to directly, the one person she had tried to forget. She started typing. "You hurt me." That was the first line. Simple, unapologetic. Not just my reputation, but my belief in people. And I wanted to hurt you back. I wanted everyone to know what you did. I wanted you to feel as humiliated as I did. But I'm not going to do that. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I deserve peace. Because I refuse to become what broke me. You lied. I forgave. Now I get to move forward. You? That's up to you. She read it once, then again. No edits, no dramatics, just the truth. She hovered over the send button. No CC, no school admin, no social media post, just Mason's school email. She clicked, sent, and then she breathed. Really breathed for the first time in weeks. Her body, once tight with injustice, softened. Her jaw unclenched, her fists loosened. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't justice, but it was release. That night, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She didn't rehearse arguments in her head. She didn't scroll through comments or gossip threads. She just slept. And when she woke up, she felt lighter, not healed, not whole, but not bitter either. In the days that followed, nothing on the outside changed. Her scholarship wasn't reinstated. The school never issued an apology. Mason didn't respond, but Lena did change. She still sat alone at lunch, still walked halls where whispers followed her like a shadow. But now, she didn't carry shame. She carried truth. And truth, once spoken, has a quiet way of dissolving the power of lies. It wasn't easy. Every now and then, the anger came back. Every time someone averted their eyes. Every time she heard Mason's laugh echo down the hallway. Every time she opened an email from a college and wondered what might have been different. But then she'd remember she could have burned it all down. But instead, she let go. And that choice would become the foundation of everything that followed. One day in English class, her teacher, the same one who hadn't defended her, handed back an essay with a post-it attached. "You write like someone who's seen both fire and forgiveness. I hope you keep going." Lena folded the note quietly and tucked it into her journal. She didn't smile outwardly, but her chest warmed. A week later, she submitted a personal essay to a small liberal arts college. She titled it, "Forgiveness Over Fire." It wasn't about Mason. It was about her, about what it meant to choose peace in a world that feeds on retaliation. She didn't think much of it after, until she got a call from the admissions office. They didn't want her GPA. They didn't want test scores. They just wanted to talk about the essay. She was accepted with a partial scholarship. Not her dream school, but maybe the one that needed her voice most. College was different. Bigger halls, new names, no reputation to defend or rebuild. She studied psychology, not because she wanted to fix people, but because she wanted to understand why people hurt others and how they heal. In freshman year, she started a blog. She called it Mend Notes, a place where people could anonymously share their own stories of betrayal, of pain, of choosing peace when they could have chosen revenge. At first, only a few classmates followed it, but word spread. By junior year, the blog had thousands of readers, submissions from strangers across the country, stories from survivors, students, former bullies turned healers. One day, her professor forwarded her a speaking opportunity, local TEDx event. Theme, the power of perspective. She almost didn't apply, but the girl who once sat at a lunch table alone, hating the world, had grown into a woman who wanted to say something real. She wrote a speech called, "You Don't Have to Burn Down What Hurt You." When she stepped onto that stage, her hands trembled. But her voice didn't. She told the story, not with names, not with blame, but with honesty. She told them how silence can become a prison, how forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself, and how sometimes the most radical thing you can do is not react, but respond, with grace, with clarity, with strength. When she finished, the room stood, not in frenzy, but in that same kind of stillness she always carried with her, the kind that made people listen. Backstage, she toweled her palms and reached for her phone, but someone was already there, a man in a hoodie, jeans, letter folded in his hand. He didn't speak right away, just stood with eyes full of something she couldn't name at first, until he said, "I read your letter every year." She froze. It was Mason. "I never said sorry," he continued. "Still don't know if I deserve to, but thank you for not becoming like me." She looked at him, older, thinner, heavier somehow, not in weight, in guilt, and she said the only thing she had left to say, "Forgiveness wasn't for you. It was never about you." He nodded, then walked away. No grand apology, no closure. But Lena didn't need more than that, because sometimes healing doesn't end in applause. Sometimes it ends in a quiet knowing. You didn't lose your peace trying to prove your pain. There's a moment that changes everything. Not the betrayal, not the apology, not even the healing, but the moment when pain becomes purpose. For Lena, that moment came quietly. On a Thursday afternoon, she was sitting on the steps outside the community center, waiting for her turn to speak at a youth seminar, notebook in hand, coffee growing cold beside her. A little girl about 10 sat down next to her, tight curls, faded hoodie, eyes too old for her age. They sat in silence for a while. Then the girl asked, "Is it true? You forgave someone who lied about you?" Lena looked up, surprised. The girl nodded at her phone screen. "My big sister showed me your TED Talk. Said maybe it would help me." Lena didn't know what to say at first, so she just nodded. "Did it help?" she asked softly. The girl shrugged, then pulled a worn letter from her pocket. "This is from my dad. He wants to come back, but I don't know if I want him to." Lena reached for the letter, then paused. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "Forgiveness isn't a door you open for someone else. It's one you walk through when you're ready." The girl smiled. It wasn't wide, but it was real. She folded the letter and slipped it back into her hoodie. "I think I'll wait," she said. That night, Lena wrote in her journal, "Forgiveness isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of someone else's." Months passed. Lena graduated with honors. Mend Notes became more than a blog. It became a movement. Workshops, retreats, a published anthology of real stories from people who chose peace. Not because it was easy, but because bitterness had become too heavy to carry. One day her inbox pinged. It was from the National Resilience Summit. They wanted her to keynote. Topic: the psychology of letting go. She almost laughed. 10 years ago, she wouldn't have even understood that phrase. Letting go? Back then, all she wanted was to be heard, to be believed, to win. But now, she'd learned something deeper. Sometimes the greatest justice is simply refusing to let the hurt define you. At the summit, Lena stood in front of a sea of therapists, social workers, teachers, and trauma counselors. Not one of them knew her past. Not one had seen the hallway stairs, the lost scholarship, the tear-soaked pillow. But they leaned in because they felt her truth. She told them, "You don't need to forgive quickly. You don't need to forgive loudly. But when the time comes, and you do choose peace, it will be the bravest thing you ever do." The audience was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that follows boredom. The kind that follows truth. Afterward, a man approached, gray hair, clipboard in hand. "I run a center for restorative justice. We work with teens who've made serious mistakes. Would you ever consider speaking to them?" She said yes, and that visit changed her life. In that center, Lena met kids who had broken trust, who had hurt others. Some had been written off, but most had been hurt first. She realized something that day. Sometimes the person who caused harm was once the person no one believed. She didn't excuse their actions, but she started seeing the systems that allowed harm to repeat. She started mentoring, teaching workshops on accountability through empathy. She became known not as the girl who was betrayed, but the woman who built a bridge between pain and purpose. One spring morning, she was invited to speak at a high school not far from the one where it all began. She hesitated. She hadn't walked those halls in nearly a decade. But something in her said, "Go back, not for closure, but because someone in that room is who you used to be." She stood on stage in the same auditorium where her suspension had once been whispered about. And now, the seats were full, not just with students, but with teachers, counselors, even a few familiar faces from her graduating class. In the front row sat a young girl with wide eyes and trembling hands. She reminded Lena of herself. At the end of her speech, there was no standing ovation, just stillness, and soft tears, the kind that fall when someone finally feels seen. Afterward, the girl came up. "Can I hug you?" she asked. Lena nodded. The girl leaned in and whispered, "I almost gave up, but now I want to keep going." Lena held her for a moment longer, because that was the moment she realized. The letter she wrote at 17 had become a lighthouse for someone else. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need vindication. She had legacy, the kind built not on what was taken from her, but on what she gave back. Anyway, so if you're listening to this, and someone has wronged you, if the world tells you that forgiveness is weakness, let Lena remind you, you are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to do with it. And sometimes, the softest path leads to the strongest version of yourself. If someone has betrayed you, if you've been hurt so deeply it rewired how you see the world, here's what I'll say: you can't eat poison and expect the other person to die. Forgiveness is a path forward, not a gift to others. Walk through your own door to freedom when you're ready. Your revenge will never be as powerful as your release, because the real power is walking away whole. Drop "I choose peace" in the comments if this hit home. Subscribe for more stories that don't just inspire, they heal. And if someone you love is holding on to pain, send this their way.